begin in just a moment. I would like to introduce Lourdes Alarcon, our interpreter, so she can begin the process of welcoming our Spanish-speaking families.
Buenas tardes a todas las familias que están asistiendo. Gracias por estar aquí. Para escuchar la interpretación en español, por favor presionen el globo que ven en la parte inferior de la pantalla y después presionen español. Yo voy a pasar al salón de español, ¿ok? O al grupo de español. Gracias.
Thank you, Lourdes. We appreciate your support. All right, well, we'd like to welcome everyone here for our EUSD first Equity Parent Webinar of the year. I'd like to introduce myself. I am Amy Illingworth, the Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services, and with me is my colleague.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Bond. I'm the Director of Curriculum, Instruction, and Accountability.
And we shared a link on the bottom of this slide that references our district website, which is eusd.net. And our department is the Educational Services Department. And we share that with you right away so you know that we have many resources related to the equity work in the district available on our website, specifically in the Ed Services area. So we welcome you here today, and we want to start by telling you that the theme of our work for this year is It Starts With Us. And the it is these three focus areas that we as a district have focused on for our teaching, our learning, and our well-being. So our first focus area as a district is multi-tiered systems of support, or MTSS. And that is really the instructional supports that we have put in place for students academically, socially, and emotionally, and behaviorally in this time when we know that students have had a variety of learning experiences over the last 2 years. So that's one of our focus areas. The second area has been well-being for both our students, our staff, and our community, because we are all in month 19 of a pandemic, and we know that we've been riding a roller coaster of emotions and different experiences. And so we honor that well-being matters to us in our community, and we take that to heart in all of our work. And our third focus area as a district has been equity. And this year we have made a conscious effort to provide professional development to every single staff member in EUSD around equity. And so we are going to share with you a preview of what that professional development has looked like and what it then looks like in the classrooms. And these three words are how we discuss equity in EUSD. We talk about identity, joy, and representation. And identity is the main focus of today, as it has been for the initial rollout of our professional learning. So we thank you for being here with us to learn a little more about equity. And so I know one of the questions we get asked a lot is why equity and why now? So here in Encinitas, we want to share with you that our board adopted a policy in 2018. It's board policy 0415, which we will share with you in more detail in a few moments. And that has been our board's commitment to continuing to ensure that we are meeting all students' needs in a diverse global society. With that board policy, we actually brought an equity committee together and reestablished it with a new purpose last school year. That equity committee includes all 9 of our school principals, as well as 2 staff members from each of our school sites. And that committee spent last year going through their own professional learning, facilitated by the San Diego County Office of Education and their equity department. We've partnered with them for our own professional learning, and then we have taken that learning and brought it to our entire district this year. Based out of that work in our board policy, we have drafted our district equity plan, which is an ongoing 3-year plan. So we wrote it for the first 3 years, knowing that the work will continue in future years as we continue to roll out the work. And we're going to share that with you today as well.
So we just completed our first session of 3 sessions of professional learning with all staff members in our district. And we begin each of our learning sessions with these norms, which really help us to create an environment where all of our participants feel comfortable to share their thoughts, their experiences, and their backgrounds as we begin our work learning together. We also like to start with this graphic to describe what we mean when we talk about equity. Previously, our focus was on equality, making sure that everyone received the same thing, that everything was fair. But if you notice in the graphic, everybody has the same bike, regardless of if they need that bike or can ride that bike. And so we really reframed our focus to be on equity. And that is about meeting each person, each child, where they're at, and helping them at their point of need so that he or she can develop to their full academic and social potential. You may have seen a graphic in the past when talking about equity, where it's some children that are watching a baseball game and they're trying to see over a fence. And so in order for all the children to be able to see over the fence, one child takes their step that they were standing on away and gives it to another child. The reason why we don't use that graphic to describe equity is because it paints the picture that someone needs to lose something in order for everybody to be able to have access. And with equity, that is not the case. No one has to lose anything so that another person can gain. It really is about getting to know each child and meeting them at their point of need.
Thank you, Jennifer. So now what we're going to do is walk you through the key elements of this board policy that is the foundation of our district equity plan. So this board policy has 10 items that define what the work looks like in our system. So number one is eradicate institutional bias of any kind. And that is no small feat. In our professional development, as we read these 10 statements, we ask our staff members to talk about where the responsibility lies for each of these items. And we recognize that number one, every single person in our system plays a role in this because we all have bias and there is institutional bias built into every system. And so as a collective, it is our job to eradicate that bias to thereby provide access to all students to the best possible educational experience. Item number 2 in our board policy asks us to make decisions with deliberate awareness of impediments to learning faced by students of color and/or diverse cultural, linguistic, or socioeconomic backgrounds. So we as a system want to make sure that when we are making decisions, we are looking at all of our students and all of their identity markers and all of their needs, because we want to take that into consideration when we plan anything that we're doing on behalf of students. Number 3, routinely assess student needs based on data disaggregated by race, ethnicity, and socioeconomic and cultural backgrounds. So we collect a lot of formal and informal data with students on a regular basis. In our system, all of our students take iReady math assessments and literally reading assessments. And part of the work that Jennifer and I do is disaggregating or pulling apart that data to see who is performing well and who is being successful and why, and then to also look at who is being less successful and to figure out why. And that takes time for us to look at the data and then look at our programs and figure out where there may be gaps in our system that we can provide support to ensure that all students reach the same levels of success. Number 4 in our board policy asks us to analyze expenditures and allocating financial and human resources in a manner that provides all students with equitable access to district programs, support services, and opportunities for success, and promotes equity and inclusion in the district. So that is a big mouthful. And when we take this apart, we talk about there are so many schools and departments that have a responsibility in this item. Our business department obviously creates budgets and helps determine where our expenditures and our money goes. And our human resources, or our admin services department, helps us hire people. But we also have principals and staff members who serve on hiring committees. And then we make sure that every year when we place students in classrooms, we want to do that with an equitable lens and make sure that every student has opportunities for success, as this calls out. And so that's something that we all play a role in. Number 5 is something that our teachers take to heart very strongly: enabling and encouraging students to enroll in, participate in, and complete curricular and extracurricular courses and other student activities. So in addition to the great work that happens during the school day, we have a lot of fun extra things that students get to participate in during lunchtime, after school, and in other avenues such as Film Guild, Star Tech, Kindness Club, SOAR. We have so many great programs. And one of the things we're asked to do as a system is to make sure that we are encouraging a wide range of students to participate in those courses and activities so that all students have access to and are welcomed in to participate in all of these activities. Number 6 is also something that we know every single person in our system plays a role in: building a positive school climate that promotes student engagement, safety, and academic and other supports for students. And we take this to heart. You know, as educators, we all came to this job because we love students. We want them to feel safe and happy when they're here. And we want a positive school climate for everyone. That's for our students, our staff, and our families, which we are hoping to welcome back to our campuses soon. Number 7, providing district staff with ongoing research-based professional learning and professional development on culturally responsive instructional practices. So many of us play a role in this. Jennifer and I, as she said, have just finished rolling out the first round of professional development with every single staff member in EUSD. And it's part of this board policy, and part of what our commitment is this year is to make sure that we are using research-based strategies to provide culturally responsive instructional practices to our staff. Number 8 asks us to conduct program evaluations that focus on equity and address the academic outcomes and performance of all students on all indicators. So this really asks us to take a look once again at where are we having success and where are we not having success, and how can we make tweaks to ensure that we have greater success for all so that all students are successful. Number 9, our board is responsible for adopting curriculum and instructional materials that accurately reflect the diversity among student groups. And so we talk a lot about what that looks like in our materials. Representation means that our students see themselves in the curriculum and that they see representation of lots of other diverse communities in our curriculum so that they learn what the global society looks like around us. And finally, number 10 asks us to promote the employment and retention of a diverse staff that reflects the student demographics of the community. And this is something that our admin services department has written as one of our LCAP goals, or one of our strategic plan goals, is to continue to promote and retain a diverse workforce that represents the students we serve. So that is an overview of our board policy and what it means for us as a system.
So this is our definition of educational equity, which we have adopted from Elena Aguilar, who's a renowned researcher and author on equity. And this definition aligns with our board policy and really frames our work. And I'll read it to you. It says, educational equity means that every child receives whatever she, he, they need to develop to her, his, their full academic and social potential and to thrive every day. Educational equity means there is no predictability of success or failure that correlates with any social or cultural factor. A child's educational experiences or outcomes are not predictable because of race, ethnicity, linguistic background, economic class, religion, gender, sexual orientation, physical and cognitive ability, or any other socio-political identity marker.
I think the phrase about no predictability of success or failure is very important in what strives to meet our board goal and to ultimately draft what our equity plan is in our district. So as I said, we've developed a plan based on these things we've shared with you. So the board policy and those 10 statements we just reviewed are the foundation of our equity plan. And what we've done is said, how are we going to meet the things that are outlined in that equity plan? So the first thing we did was adopt this educational equity definition. So we all are following the same definition of this work. And we established our equity committee, which continues to meet regularly for their own professional learning to then support the sites with their learning. As we said, we are providing professional development to every staff member in our district. And some of the other components of our plan are that we regularly do data analysis. And again, that's looking at disaggregated data so we can figure out which students are being successful in which areas and why, and where are students not being as successful and why. Another big component that we brought into our equity committee were empathy interviews. What these are is a group of our committee members went out and interviewed former EUSD students who were as young as 6th, 7th grade last year, all the way through grown adults who have all gone through school here in our Encinitas schools. And the people who were interviewed all have a close personal relationship with the person who was interviewing them. And they were willing to go on audio or videotape for us so that we could bring their voices into our professional development. We wanted to listen to the lived experiences of diverse community members so we could hear from them how their school experience was. And bringing student voice into our professional learning is really important to us because in Encinitas, we listen to students at all levels of our system. Student voice is what drives so many of our decision making, and that includes our professional development around empathy and around equity. And we wanted to hear from a diverse group of people and what their experiences were in our school so we could learn from their lived experiences. We are so grateful to everyone who has tuned in for this webinar because community engagement is another piece of our equity plan. This is a first of many equity webinars that we will offer at the district level, and we know that your principals will engage with you at the site level as well in this work because you are our partners in this work, and we want to engage with you in ongoing equity conversations on behalf of our entire community. You saw in the board policy that we have to make sure that we are looking at our programs and our curriculum to show that they are meeting student needs. So a piece of our equity plan is to do a deep dive into our curriculum and do an audit to make sure that our curriculum is telling all sides and all perspectives of events that we teach based on grade level standards. So looking at our curriculum as a piece of our 3-year plan with equity. And finally, we always connect equity to social emotional learning, or SEL. As you know, we've had a very robust track program in Encinitas for a number of years, and we are so proud of the work of our track teachers and our students and our staff in progressing with SEL. And we know that having kids feel like they belong, feel included, feel welcome, doesn't only make them feel good socially and emotionally, but it helps them achieve academically. And that's a piece of equity work as well. When we feel a sense of belonging and we feel we are included, we are ready to achieve and partner and collaborate with one another, and we have greater success. And so we know that SEL connects strongly with equity.
I love to share this quote because I think it concisely states the purpose of our equity work. And really what Amy had just talked about is really creating that sense of belonging in each of our schools. So the quote is, we have to create spaces where everyone can bring their full humanity. And so that's how we discuss our learning when we work with our staff members, is really how can we create workspaces and classroom learning spaces where everyone can be recognized and celebrated for bringing their full humanity. So as we mentioned earlier, our first session of learning was really focused on identity. And we asked participants to really think of our identity work using this metaphor. First is looking at identity as a mirror looking in, as a way to really reflect on our own beliefs and identity and experiences. And then also to think of identity as a window looking out, as a way to gain insight on our students and families and colleagues to learn more about them. And the reason why this work is so important is because it really allows us to create a sense of belonging and shared purpose within our schools and districts. Our actions are driven by our own set of values and beliefs and our sense of identity. So through understanding that and sharing that with others, it helps us to, again, create that shared purpose.
I know one of the questions that we often get from parents is, okay, so you're doing this professional development. What does it look like for my child in our classroom? So what we're going to do next is share some examples of the identity work. So we did this professional development, and our teachers did that mirror work looking in, as well as the window work looking out, and did their own identity work. And then what we want to share with you now is what that then translated to into the classroom, which was really about giving children that sense of belonging, where we bring our full humanity into the learning, our collaboration, and our community. So one of the first activities we always did in professional development, that is a really easy icebreaker activity with anyone, students or adults, is to give small groups an opportunity to collaborate, to get to know themselves better. And these were the questions we used with our staff, and many of them took a version of them back to the students and gave them time to speak. So the questions we asked were for them to share in a group what I think about me, what others think about me, what might be misunderstood about me, and what I need from the group. So this was the way we began our professional learning, and teachers took a version of this back as a way to create some class community and get to know you activities that is linked to identity, because I'm sharing a piece of myself that I want you to know about me.
Another activity that was that was shared with teachers from the principals, and then also then taken and used in some of the classrooms, was this What's in a Name activity. And really the purpose of this activity is to discuss the importance of our names, who named us, where our names came from. And really the importance is that our name is important to our cultural and social identity. And so really participants are asked to think about like how we got our names, how to correctly pronounce our names, and why that is important to learn how to correctly pronounce each other's names. And then even looking to see like what connections can be made with sharing a name with others. And a fourth grade teacher in our district then took this activity back to use with her students. And so she started by sharing picture books about names with her students, where they read the books together. And then she had the students write a prompt about either the origin of their names or thoughts they have on their own names. And then finally, they created a visual representation of their name and words that they used to describe themselves. And so you'll notice some of the words are their likes and dislikes, personality traits, things that are important to them. Another activity that we did with the staff members was we had them create their own identity map. And so then after they created it, they shared their maps with others from their staff as a way to get to know each other, to get to know their identities, and to really build connections and empathy. And then an example of how this work has been done with students is these two examples of identity work. You'll see that they focus on likes and dislikes, student hobbies, and personality traits. And again, it's another opportunity for creating that sense of community and belonging in the classroom. It's a chance for students to get to know one another better.
This is another great example from another teacher who shared with me that she took the identity work back and had her students brainstorm some adjectives and words to describe themselves. And then they each drew these self-portraits and they outlined their faces or their bodies even with the words used to describe themselves. And I happened to visit the classroom and take this picture and asked her to share with me what happened. And she said they did this back in September, and she tried to remove the artwork off the walls to hang up new artwork, and the students wouldn't let her take these down. They enjoy looking at them and reading each other's words so much. And I just love that they want to continue to learn about each other. And every time I look at this, I can see different words that the students have used, from joyful to thoughtful to funny to friend. It's so wonderful to see the way the students choose to represent themselves in these various artwork and written forms. But this is a way for us to get to know different pieces of their identity from their viewpoint. And some other sample lessons related to identity that our teachers are doing. This identity iceberg on the left, we often talk about how we wear parts of our identity on the outside of our body, or in the case of an iceberg, you can see only a small percentage of an iceberg above the water, and there's actually a larger percentage of an iceberg below the water. And very similarly, there's so much more to our identities that we wear under our skin or inside. Those are our personality traits and different elements of our identities that you have to know only by getting to know us or when we're willing to share with you. So that's a different way to represent the thoughts and how teachers began those conversations. And on the right-hand side, one of our track teachers actually asked students to create a vision board that shows where they want to go in life and what their aspirations are. So this is a great example of not just who I am now, but who I want to be in the future and how I can set goals to reach my vision. And this all connects to the work we identify as identity work. Finally, these are two other examples from one of our another track teacher. The example on the right that says "we are" in the center. Every second and third grader at this school was able to complete one of those red or orange strips of papers where they said something that they are, such as I am creative, I am good, I am smart, I am loving. And they were all able to add their pieces of paper to make this collective sun in a room where every student sees this sun every week when they go to their track lessons. So it's a beautiful collective way to share a piece of themselves. You can even see there's clouds floating around the sun with more details about themselves. themselves. And on the left-hand side, the upper grade students did something similar, but they created an identity diamond or a hexagon where they were able to fill in many of these different corners of their papers with, again, descriptions as well as diagrams and graphics to describe themselves and their interests and how they wanted to be seen. And finally, every year the PTA creates an essay contest. And this year's essay contest happened to be I Will Change the World By. And so we wanted to share with you this sample that one of our students wrote this year as an example of equity work that this child did on their own in response to this essay. So my name is Ziggy, and I will change the world by writing and illustrating children's books that have characters who better represent all the children in the world. I'm Ghanaian American, and this picture book I drew is my first book cover. Each night, my family and I read books together, and I am always hoping there is a character whose skin color is the same as mine. I want all kids to be able to see more of themselves in stories about friendship, adventure, sports, and fun. It feels good to see someone that looks like me. So we thank Ziggy for letting us share his essay.
So if you have questions about what identity work looks like in your child's classroom, please definitely ask your child's teacher to feel free to reach out. And then for site-specific questions, definitely feel free to reach out to your site principal. We plan to have future parent webinars throughout this year. So definitely please let your principal know if you have specific questions or topics you would like us to address. And we always end our sessions with this visual. Just because you are right does not mean I am wrong. You just haven't seen life from my side. So thank you for joining us for our first webinar.
Thank you so much for your time and attention today, and we look forward to collaborating with you again in the future.